This episode of the Real ResQ podcast is brought to you by Breeze Eastern, the world's only dedicated helicopter hoist and winch provider. SR3 ResQ Concepts, because you don't know what you don't know. And Life Saving Systems Corporation. We do our work so you can do yours. Tough gear for tough jobs. Breeze Eastern. They dedicate themselves to our helicopter rescue world. Since the very first helicopter rescue in November of 1945, Breeze Eastern has designed and manufactured superior rescue hoist solutions. While much of the technology and the unique mission requirements have changed over the past 75 years, their commitment to the rescuers, the operators, and those being rescued has not. Contact them today by visiting them at breeze-eastern.com. SR3 ResQ Concepts is a training company that can help with your helicopter training, a standardization and safety check, or maybe just an audit or an FAA refresher. They are here to bring your agency up to date with the most current techniques, rules, regulations, and equipment. The training staff is awesome. With a certified flight instructor pilots, experienced crew members, which I am happy to say that I am one of them, they offer training in rescue, medical, tactical, firefighting, ground operations, and night vision goggle use. SR3 is also partnered with Petzl to assist with personal protective equipment and the highly specific Lazard. SR3 also goes beyond the helicopter world as they provide high-angle rescue training and tactical medicine training. Contact them today at sr3rescueconcepts.com or over on Instagram at sr3_rescue. And Life Saving Systems Corporation. They manufacture the world's toughest helicopter rescue gear. From my favorite harness as a rescueman, the Triton harness, to the rescue baskets, the litters, and of course, the most popular hook in all helicopters, the D-Lock. The team at LSC will cut, bend, sew, weld, and machine these products into existence every day. We do our work so you can do yours. LSC, tough gear for tough jobs. Check them out today at lifesavingsystems.com and follow them on Instagram at Rescue Gear. That's at ResQGEAR. He is back with another epic rescue. Came with an air medal out of Kodiak, Alaska. United States Coast Guard rescue swimmer number 122, my friend, Mr. George Cavallo. My name is Jason Quinn. I am United States Coast Guard rescue swimmer number 500. These are my rescues and rescues from those of us that put our lives on the line every day so others may live. This is the Real ResQ podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Real ResQ podcast. I have yet another amazing guest, but this makes it even better because this is round two. Boom. U.S. Coast Guard rescue swimmer number 122, Mr. George Cavallo. What's up,
You're
George?
a glutton for punishment. I'm back.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. Well, that's because you have more stories and I want to hear them.
All right. Well, I'll tell them to you.
Nice. So since everybody out there should know who you are, I'm going to move right into this. And so you recap, I'm going to recap a little bit. So you went out and got a killer case off Humboldt Bay where the C-130 had gone in and you had one lone survivor out of it. It was an incredible story. Even my wife, when she listened to it, she was like, wow, like, are there really sharks in the water that go around? I'm like, yeah, there's other stories like that too. So, but now we are going to move up into Kodiak, Alaska, where this case happened, which was awesome. And actually, you and I were just talking a little bit offline, but I actually met you like 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks prior to this case, because I had come up to Alaska real quick. We had a break in school where it was we went into holiday routine, and all of us, we had like a week off. So I bounced up to Kodiak with my family at the time, and my youngest daughter had just been born. So I dropped into the swimmer shop. I'm like, hey, I'm the guy that's going to be coming here in like 3 months. You're like, yeah, sure you are.
Well, I think we made you come to the pool, right?
You did.
That's the Kodiak way. If you're going to be a swimmer, we had some pretty tough workouts in Kodiak, that's for sure.
I remember getting my ass kicked, which is probably the best thing for me.
I'm pretty sure the guys were trying to make you throw up as a new airman in the pool. And so in essence, torturing all of ourselves while you were in the pool with us. But
duly noted. That never came out. Just
the Kodiak
awesome
way.
That it is indeed. I love it. So I met you, like I said, just before then. Then I went back to school, and poof, you're on duty, and here you are, and you pull in this incredible rescue, and I'm going to read it, and then please walk us through
Well,
this.
actually, I wasn't on duty. I was the chief of the shop. So I still stood duty, but not as often as most of the other guys. So I actually was in my my tropical blues working uniform, more of an office dress uniform. And one of the guys had cut his finger and had to go over to medical and get some stitches, and so was sent home. So I just, and I think it was like a Friday, or it was a weird, nobody really I go, I'll take the duty, whatever. But I was still in my uniform. And I'm sure this guy, whoever it was out of the shop not more than an hour, and the whoopee went off. And here I am in my dress uniform. So now I got to run and switch out of that, put on my dry suit, and get ready to be rescue swimmer guy.
And that's the way it happens.
That's the way it happens.
There's so many stories like that. It wasn't my duty day, but
yeah, it's kind of interesting. You don't see too many chiefs pulling an air medal. Usually by that time they're more in an office. But in Kodiak, the chief and the senior chief, Olaf Lavelle, you had to stand duty. I mean, you just got to lead from the front. It's so extreme there. But we definitely didn't stand duty as much as everybody else, but we were in the rotation for sure.
Well, it was super nice. Like for me coming in, it definitely set a precedent and a standard for me, as my career has progressed. And even now, I still stand the ready. And I've been doing this for 20 years. I love it. And when that call comes in, man, I get all jumped up and ready to go. But I
think you have to. That keeps you in tune of what's going on, and what the guys are going through, right?
Yeah. Well, and you know what? You guys were always cool, because all of us that had young kids or families, you guys would usually take a lot of the holidays. You'd take Christmas, or it's like, oh, we don't have kids right now, so we'll take this, which is really nice for the rest of us. And,
Olaf and we always would rotate. One of us would take Christmas and one of us would take New Year's. But it's the least we could do. We had a good group of guys up there.
It was always funny when you guys were standing duty, and then the alarm would go off, and then all of a sudden you'd be flying out the Aleutian chain, and we'd be like, see you in 3 days.
Here goes the boss.
Sweet. He's gone for the next 3 days.
That's how it works.
It was, we represented the shop every time you left for that amount of time.
Yep.
Anyway. All right. So this case right here, like I said, incredible. So I'm excited to read it. Citation to accompany the award of the Air Medal to George R. Cavallo, Chief Aviation Survival Technician, United States Coast Guard. Chief Petty Officer Cavallo is cited for heroic achievement in aerial flight while serving as rescue swimmer of Coast Guard HH-60J helicopter 6023 on the afternoon of January 5th, 2000. The aircrew was engaged in a perilous rescue of 3 survivors from the fishing vessel Raduga. Is that pronounced correctly? Radiga. Sorry. From the fishing vessel Radiga, that capsized off the coast of Kodiak, Alaska in a heavy snowstorm. Dispatched Coast Guard Air Station Kodiak, the aircrew skillfully navigated the aircraft around terrain through heavy snow, 1.5 mile visibility, and 40-knot winds. Arriving on scene with the capsized vessel, Chief Cavallo immediately recognized that one of the survivors had been unable to make it into Radiga's survival raft and was floundering in the stormy seas. Deploying into the churning 25-foot seas, Chief Cavallo fought his way to the first survivor. As the rescue basket was lowered into the water to recover the survivor, he discovered that the victim's survival suit is completely filled with water, making him almost impossible to manage in the huge seas. Despite the towering seas, Chief Cavallo successfully placed the fisherman into the rescue basket, enabling him to safely be hoisted into the helicopter. Over the next 30 minutes, Chief Cavallo was deployed into the 25-foot seas 2 more times to recover the remaining fishermen. With all 3 survivors safely on board the helicopter, he immediately began warming the hypothermic survivors. As the aircraft fought its way back to Kodiak through the snowstorm conditions, Chief Cavallo continued to monitor the survivors' vital signs and condition until they were safely delivered to an awaiting ambulance. His swift, decisive performance was instrumental in saving all 3 lives of the crewman fishing vessel Radiga. Fishing vessel Radiga. Chief Cavallo's actions, skills were instrumental in the rescue of 3 survivors. His courage, judgment, and devotion to duty are most heartily commending, in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Coast Guard. Wow. 25-foot seas, 40-knot winds, snowstorm, just another day in Kodiak, Alaska.
Yeah, it's so funny when they write those up, because there's so much more that went on in that case, and it's I guess they have to write it up how they write it up, but the pilots were amazing what they did. I mean, we'll talk about it when we go through it, and the flight mechanic. I always say, those 3 guys, I may have saved 3 people, but they saved 4, right?
It's so true. It is so true.
Yeah. I love my pilots and flight mech. I mean, they're always they're like our guardian angels, and I think they don't get enough recognition. They're just amazing folks, that's for sure.
So this says off Kodiak,
it was actually off. What was that? Cape Chiniak. So it's about 40 or 50 miles, I think, Cape Chiniak.
Okay. Yeah, it's not super far.
Yeah, not super far as far as the helicopter goes, that's for sure.
So Kodiak Island is what they're referring to, not Kodiak Air Base. I got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So hit me. So what? Yeah, so the alarm goes off, and you're not even on duty.
I'm in a dress uniform, and I'm like, what?
So you look out the window. You're like, damn it, it's snowing.
Yeah, I run in and I change, and the whoopie's going off, and it's rescue swimmer provide, which we've heard many times, and my head's not in it because I was doing office work that day, so I get my bag. I hadn't even really looked through it. It's usually ready to go, but so I ran out on the hangar deck, and of course the helicopter is all the way across the tarmac. So now it's icy and raining and blowing snow. So I got to put clamp-ons on my boots just to get to the helicopter, right? So I put the spike clamp-ons on my boots. I got the 80-pound rescue swimmer bag over to the side. I'm huffing and puffing from changing from Superman in the telephone booth. And now I'm racing across the hangar. I hadn't even gotten in a helicopter yet, and I could have died. It's crazy. So, I get over to the helicopter, and the flight mech's coming down, from the rotor head. He had been up there doing a quick inspection, but it was so snarly out there that, he comes down, and the pilots met us all there, and we chit-chatted real quick and said, we've got this 35-foot longliner called a Mayday, and they said that the hull fractured due to the wave state. And I'm like, the hull fractured? What the heck does that mean, right? Yeah. And he said, well, yeah, then we lost communication with him. So we've got this 35-foot longliner, that has the big reel on the back so they can put all those lines of water in. So, yep. And we say a lot of them in Kodiak. And so, we get in the helicopter like normal, and we clear the engines and start up. But, it's a Mayday, so everybody's a little more amped, right?
Right.
And the pilot, and in Kodiak, a lot of times they'll taxi out, go over to the runway and then take off from the runway and do their mission. Well, the pilot asked for permission to just take off right from the ramp, and was granted and that's what we did. We took straight up right from the ramp, turned up over the hangar and out offshore, and started heading towards Kodiak. Well, the weather was such that, the ceiling was down to about 250, 300 feet, and it was just blowing snow sideways, right?
Yeah.
And then the ocean is 25, 30 foot waves. So you've got this little window of what, maybe 150, 200 feet to fly in.
Right.
And that's where we're at, right? And now in the back, I have a little repeater, right, that sits between my legs where I can look at the different airports. I run the radios from back there, as you know, and then I'm also checking to see what our fuel state is and kind of keeping track of that. And I realized that Kodiak's pretty close, within 40 miles, maybe 20-minute flight time. I'm going to need to start getting my rescue swimmer gear on. So I pass over the radio comms to the co-pilot. Because when we're in the water, the co-pilot does our little radio comms, checking in with the Coast Guard, letting them know every 15 minutes that we're safe.
Yep.
And so while I'm back there and I'm digging through my bag, this loud bang goes off, and it sounds like artillery shells. 2 more bangs go off, and you start looking around, right? You know every smell, every sight, every little hum in the back of that helicopter. And when it's off a little bit, everybody gets nervous.
Right.
And I looked over at the flight mech. He looked at me pretty puzzled. And then now it sounded like a couple more rounds hit the tail. And I picked up my ICS and was getting ready to say something. And the pilot comes back and he says, "Oh shit, we just lost anti-icing." And so what was happening was, on the blades, the rotor head blades, there's these pads that heat the blades and keep ice from building up on it, right? Because when ice builds up, it changes the shape of the blade, and the helicopter doesn't want to fly anymore. And that's a bad thing, right?
That's a bad day.
Good, bad, that's bad. So I guess what was going on is these chunks of ice were slinging off the blades and hitting the tail, which houses the tail rotor, right?
Yeah.
So needless to say, it was scaring the shit out of all of us. And the pilot says, we're aborting, we're turning around. So he banked the helicopter and immediately dropped the altitude closer to the water to trying to find warm air, right? Trying to get, because the higher you go, the colder the air is. And that, we didn't want the helicopter to stop flying. Yeah. So he made the turn, lowered the helicopter. There were a couple of smaller taps, but nothing like the couple of big ones we had. So we called back to the station. And so I'm thinking they're going to, launch out another helicopter with another swimmer. And I'm not going to be on this case. So he comes streaming over the hangar. He does this, pulls the nose up, bam, sets the helicopter down on the deck. The pilots are amazing, the stuff they do with that helicopter. It's like part of their body, right? And, we're in the back going, woo! We don't realize that, this thing's not made to fly. And, well, sure enough, they had pulled out a second helicopter and they had cranked it up. And there was just a mechanic in the helicopter who started it up, right? And he's just sitting there holding it. So we grab all our gear. We race across the iced, snowy tarmac to the new helicopter and get in it. I mean, this transition must have taken 5-6 minutes at the most. And then he got permission again to take off right from the runway, straight up, banked it over the hangar we went, and back out to sea. So
wow.
Now we're in a second helicopter.
and it's, there's got to be, I'm going to throw this out there because you're now behind, like you're behind the curve. And I say that because, we pride ourselves on a launch time, like whether it's 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever your launch time is, you want to shrink that down as quickly as possible. You've launched and had to turn around, come back, and now you're going back out. That's people that are out there in the water that are like, holy cow, they're coming. Where are they? And now you have this delay. Okay.
Yeah, and the last call we got that they were Mayday and abandoning ships. So you don't know, are they in the water?
Right.
What's going on there, and the amount of time they can survive in Alaskan waters. Depending on if they get a Gumby suit, if they don't get in the Gumby suit.
Right.
So right, and I'm not sure how much time has transpired about this, but yeah, we're dealing with our own issues.
Wow.
Right, the flying
Wow.
was like, again, I said the reason. I'm still astonished that the pilots and flight mechanic they got a medal a little lower than an air medal, but in my book, they deserved an air medal as well. So, well, about this time we start heading out to Chiniak, and now we're getting closer, and so I'm in the back again. I've handed off the radios again. I'm changing into my what I call getting wet gear, right? I'm getting my hood on, I got special gloves that have fleece. Makes your hands useless, but at least your hands don't freeze, right? So you're putting these gigantic Gumby mittens on, and pulling my big black fins on and mask. And I slide up in the door, and Jason, at that point, you take your headset off, so you don't know what's going on. So right. We had seen a raft out the door, and about the time I slide up into the door, and I don't know if I saw it, the flight mechanic, but I think we kind of spotted it at the same time. We started pointing. There was a guy downwind of the raft, which we were all kind of focusing on when we first got on scene. And then, it was gnarly. These seas were 25 foot, but there were 30 footers coming in, and seas in that state, when they're riding together, they're not bad, right? It's just these big kind of rollers, but what happens is some of them get out of sync, and then they start smashing into each other, and it looks like a washing machine. Everything's just going in every direction.
Yeah. So
the guys in the raft aren't doing too good, but we need to get the guy who's downwind, because he looks like he hasn't made it fully in his Gumby suit. He's halfway in, halfway out, and it's like he froze or locked up with it around his waist and wasn't able to get his arms in there. Hypothermic sets in, and it starts to cut the blood supply off to your arms and legs. So he's not functioning right now. He's not able to do that. So that kind of gets us all amped up. We need to get this guy. So the pilots slide over. I'm off ICS, and I'm doing a lot of pointing, the mech's pointing, and I can see him talking to the pilots, and they picked up on it pretty quick, and we slid over, and I jumped in the water, did a free fall deployment, and it's amazing when you hit the water and you go under the water, right? So you're in this, you kind of land in this soup of mess and waves and wind, but you go underwater and everything's quiet.
Yeah.
It's like dead silence, and you're like, The minute you come up, it's a shitstorm, right? You're like, what the? This is, they can't even make this in a pool in Hollywood. I mean, this stuff's just crazy. So I'm trying to swim to this guy, and the waves are, how you get on the top of the wave and you look and you see the guy and you're like, woohoo, and then all of a sudden he's gone, right? Because this wave goes up, the helicopter's over here behind you, and now a wave, you can't see him because the wave's high enough, it's covering where the helicopter is. And so you really just got to stay oriented to that guy. So I kept swimming, and we trained pretty hard in the pool. And I always remember Bob Watson say, one day we were doing one of our workouts and pushing it really hard. And I said, well, what's your motivation? He said, the Bering Sea, which is, Gulf of Alaska and where we're at. I'm like,
Herring for the Bering. Come on, Bob Watson.
So yeah, I was kicking it in and feeling lucky that we had those really hard workouts in Kodiak. And it took me a while, but I got to the guy, and he was out of it. He couldn't talk. He couldn't move. This suit's full of water, and the pilots and the crew. I mean, it's like a ballet out there. They know what I want. I didn't even signal yet. I wanted a strop, but they lowered a basket for some reason, but that's okay. We're going to use it.
Yeah.
I couldn't get him in the basket. The whole, those Gumby suits are oversized. They're made to be pulled on. It's got a hood over your head, and you've got big mittens, and you zip it up the front, and it protects you from that environment. The water that's in there heats up from your body, and that helps. Some guys have gone 14 hours in a Gumby suit.
Yeah. Well,
this thing was just around his waist, but the feet had filled up, and balloon to 3 times their size.
Holy
And
cow.
so, and I was kind of funny because I remember hearing Lobs talk about, never pulling his knife out. And I had never really pulled my knife out to do anything with it. And I was thinking about but his foot was somewhere in there, and I didn't really want to hurt the guy with his foot. So I'm trying to keep him afloat because he can't move. He's numb, he's babbling. He's trying to move his hands, but he's so hypothermic, he's near death at this point. And the pilots and the flight mech are being patient because I'm working on this guy in the water. I'm trying to get his legs off, and his legs are twisted and he's locked up almost rigor mortis, right? So I'm trying to pull these things off. I'm having to go underwater, hold him up, and reach and grab for this suit and try and rip his legs off. And finally, after, and again, in their time you don't really know. It could have been 3 minutes, it could have been 9 minutes, I don't know. But I finally got the suit off. And I got him in the basket, but the raft was still a good distance away. So we hoisted him up. They picked me up, and we air taxied over. And I'll tell you, when you get back in that helicopter, and you're like, holy crap. And you look back out the window, you're like, I got to go back in that. But it's what you do, right? It's what we do.
Yeah.
It's what we train for. And, but I think for a moment there, any swimmer thinks that. It's like, oh, I got to go back into this thing. So 2 more times I went back in. The guys on the raft, they were doing pretty well. They had gotten in their Gumby suits. They were in a raft. They were moving around. So basically had to get them in the water, do a hoist, trying to stay out of the wave troughs. The waves were smashing into them. But I got the second guy up, and he was gone. And I immediately swam over to the raft. And as you know, we've talked about many times, if you leave the raft behind, it winds up getting blown miles away. Right. And then some boater inevitably calls this raft in again. Yep. And a crew goes out risking its life to try and save a raft. So for the first time, I was excited because I got to use my switchblade, right? I pulled that bad boy out, and I started stabbing the raft in the water, and got hit by a couple of waves. And at one point, between the second and third guy, I saw the screws of the turtle boat in the surf in one of the troughs. So it had popped up, and the 2 screws from the boat had come out of the water, splashed down, and then that's the last time I saw it. It disappeared. So I did get to see the actual boat that they had been on. Made one last appearance.
Wow.
Shortly before the third guy was hoisted. So now I just want to get out of the water, right? It's not a nice place, not a good environment. So I signal for the strop, but again, the basket comes down. And I think, the mechs, they get caught up in this as well as we do. So he just lowered what he had on there. Well, as swimmers, we don't want to get in the basket. No. It's a little confined space. I've got fins on, but it is what I had, right? Yeah. And you have to get contorted to try and get yourself in there because you've got 3 feet of fins coming out of your legs, and this basket's made for a small man. Right. It seems like they've gotten better now. They're much bigger.
Say it can fit 2 people, but man, I don't think you and I would fit in that basket. I'm just saying.
No, especially in Alaska, a big burly fisherman in a Gumby suit.
Yeah, no,
you're not getting him in there. And maybe that should have been briefed beforehand. We were going to use the sling to pick people up. It's where we just wrap it around them and we hook to them, and the 2 of us come up together, which is a much safer maneuver. So I wasn't excited about getting into this thing. And I finally get in there, get my fins in there, and I hold on and I signal. Well, the helicopter drifts off while you're playing around in the basket, and they pay out extra line in the water waiting for you to get settled, and then they kind of slide over plumb and pull you up, right? Well, all this cable's in the water, and they're starting to slide over. 2 or 3 waves around me had collided together, and I was caught in the center of this, and I saw it. I knew it was coming, and I maybe got a half a sip of air, and I was on the ride of my life. There's not this is probably one of the few times I thought, this is it, I'm going to die. There's just no way. And the basket got wrapped up in the cable underwater and is spinning. And so when these waves receded, the basket spun out like a yo-yo with me in the center. And when it locked out, I mean, that was it. I thought I was glad to get air, but the pilot and the flight mechanic were amazing. I mean, they pulled full block on the hoist, started checking me out of the water. I think the pilot even started raising up, you know, to get me out of there, because 2 more waves were coming to do the same thing again. And I threw up, and because I was dizzy and just out. I mean, you know, when you feel like you don't know what's going on, where you're at. I mean, that spinning and being underwater in the whitewash like that. I mean, I've had some bad surfing events where I've gotten caught in that whitewash, but this was horrible. And as we're coming up, because they felt the need to pull me out of the water a lot quicker before being plumb, the basket shot into the air and immediately pendulum swung up towards the tail. Jeez. And so now I look up, I'm starting to get my composure, and there's the tail wheel and the tail rotor, you know, some feet away from me. And I'm like, oh my God, this is awful. I mean, you know, it's like time slows down. I'm like, this sucks. And when it swung back around, I hit the wave and it stopped the pendulum move. The helicopter got in line and they pulled me up. I got in the aircraft and I probably needed like 2 minutes just to get my composure. And now I look and there's 3 fishermen laying on the deck, right? Yeah. So I got to pull out the thermal recovery. We've got little sleeping bags that are made with fleece lined or something. Yeah.
Super thick, and
put them in there and you start trying, you know, like we're getting the cabin heated up, and the 2 fishermen were fine. The one gentleman, I had to be real ginger with and reheat him slowly, because if you heat him too fast, that blood can rush to the heart and stop it. Yeah. So I was very cautious on how I got him. And that was, you know, then we flew back and landed, and there was an ambulance waiting for the 1 fisherman, and I think the other 2 walked off the aircraft, and my legs were a little wobbly, but
wow. Holy cow. George, that's insane.
Yeah, that's why, you know, when you read it, I'm like, oh, that doesn't sound so exciting.
And that's the thing is you read these and you're like, oh, wow, good job. No. You have no idea what
you don't get the full story.
No.
But and you know, and I'm sure the pilots, there was stuff going. I mean, the pilot and flight mech were dealing with a whole litany of other things that I'm not privy to, because I was in the water and just trying to, you know, get out of my situation.
Right.
And the pilot's trying to maintain with such a small ceiling. They have to time those waves. The flight mech, he's got to, you know, and you're a flight mech. You've done some duties as a flight mech. You know, you've got to pay that line out just right. I mean, you can seriously hurt your guy in the water. So again, you know, that's why I always say I rescued 3 guys that day, but the pilot and flight mech, they rescued 4.
Yeah, that extra hoist, and I will totally agree with you, because when I'm hoisting, the last thing I want to do is jerk somebody off the ground, you know, or injure the guy that I'm trying to save, or the rescue men. Like that is always running through my mind.
Yeah, and that's why we train, and you know, and it's a team event, and all too often they want to try and give one person, you know, a medal, and I'm always against that. I think if one guy gets that medal, the whole crew should get that medal, and those guys in my book are heroes, and you know, I'll always be grateful to them.
I totally agree. Yeah, I absolutely agree. And you know, like I've mentioned this before as well. You get the guys in the aircraft. It's not like everybody's job is done. We're not done. We've just completed the hard part. Now the next step, and maybe that's the hard part. You know, it's again case dependent, patient dependent, but You got to rewarm guys. You got to take vitals.
Right.
The pilots still have to get us home. One of the stories that we heard not too long ago is from Vegas. Those guys in Vegas, they picked up the patients, and now the pilot has to go back in and pick the rescue men up. They're not done. We're not done until we're back on base and sitting down at a debrief and like maybe a Coca-Cola in hand, maybe we're finally having a beer to relax and be like, oh wow, what a case. But yeah, so
well, that water is so cold in Alaska. When we get new swimmers in Kodiak, and I don't know if they still do it, but we always tried to go out early in the year before the weather got really bad, and we did what we called Dry Suit Appreciation Day, and we'd go over to the crab house, and all the swimmers just in our swim shorts, we'd swim out around 25 feet around a pole in the water and come back.
Yep.
And you're in the water maybe, what would you say, Jason, 2 or 3 minutes?
Not long.
And
long
then
enough
we're
to
all
know
hightailing it. We're trying to run back to the showers, and your legs aren't working, your arms aren't working. But it was always good because it taught me, every time I was in the back of that helicopter and I knew somebody was in the water, I knew what it felt like. So,
right.
I'm staring out that window and I could feel their pain and doing everything I could, and the crews of the helicopters doing everything they could to try and get those guys as fast as possible, because they're not going to make it.
Yeah. Wow. Good job.
I'm exhausted. Just tell me.
and man, it's fun because we talk about this too. Every one of us could do that job. The guy that actually had the duty could have done that job. It just so happened he cut his finger, went to the clinic, and poof, now you're in the helicopter.
Yeah. Well, I think all the swimmers go through such a great training program. By the time they get to be swimmers and they're standing duty, yeah, you could plug any one of us into that position and they would have done a stellar job. I mean, the professionals and the swimmers we worked with there at the time when I was in Kodiak and the chief of the shop, yeah. I felt fortunate. It was amazing. And it was the pinnacle of my career. Shortly after that, I became a warrant officer, and I really didn't care for that job. And I left the rescue swimmer. But I think it's a younger man's gig. When I was in my 20s, I didn't think about dying. I wanted the next. I wanted to push myself to the limits. I started to get into my 30s. I would hear the whoopee go off. Oh no. You get into your 40s, you're like, what am I doing? This is crazy, right?
Oh, that's awesome. It's got to be a better way to make a living. Kid me, I love this. I'll do this.
I used to tell the new guys all the time they come out and do their first flight with me, and I'd scream in their ear on the way up, their very first Kodiak flight. I'd scream, "We get paid for doing this." And they'd look at me like, "What?"
Oh, man.
I loved my job. I loved it.
Me too.
I miss it.
Well, come hang out with me for a little while. It'll be all right.
All right.
Man, I will say, it's been a long time since I've been in any waves that are 25 feet or bigger. Heck, even 10 feet or bigger. It's been a hot minute. So
yeah. Anything over 2 foot is extreme nowadays.
Yeah, you're like, whoa. Can we turn this down a notch? Easy does it now.
Where's the hot tub?
Man, George, thank you for sharing that. That is incredible.
Hey, my pleasure, Jason. I think you're doing a good thing here. I enjoy your podcast, so awesome. Appreciate it.
Well, I do have you on here, so if there are any other memorable ones that you've got and you want to share, man, the floor is yours. You can.
I have so many, Jason. I don't even know where to start. We'll have to chat about that and come up with some. All
right.
I'm going to have about 30 of them in my book,
which I'm very excited to when that comes out.
Sharks and Daisies. Hoping the editing process is grueling. So hopefully I can have that ready by sometime next year, 2022. We'll see.
All right. Well, man, I can't thank you enough for coming on again a second time.
Sure, my pleasure.
It's awesome. Rescue swimmer number 122, George Cavallo.
Woo! All right, Jason. Awesome. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of here. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Real ResQ podcast. Please take a minute and, like my daughters like to tell me, like and subscribe. Oh yeah. I'm pulling chocks and taking off. But before I go, if anyone out there has a rescue story that they would be willing to share, I would be humbled and honored to have you as a guest. Or if you have any questions about any of the rescues or anything else that we talk about here on this podcast, send me an email. TheRealResQ@gmail.com. That's TheRealResQ@gmail.com. You can also check us out on our Facebook and Instagram page at The Real ResQ. That's at TheRealResQ. I also want to give a special thank you to all of you staying on the watch today. Always remember that when that SAR alarm goes off, those in distress are praying for a miracle. They are going to get you. Until next time, fly safe and swim hard.